I took a night watch job at a warehouse where I was told I'd be completely alone the entire shift. By the end of my first night, I knew that wasn't true. And whatever else was inside that building, it wasn't just passing through. It knew exactly where I was. I took the job because it sounded easy. Overnight security, decent pay, no interaction with people, just sitting in a room watching camera feeds and logging anything unusual. Honestly, it felt like the kind of job where nothing ever really happens. The warehouse itself sat on the edge of town, far enough out that when I pulled into the parking lot that night, it felt almost cut off from everything else. There were no other cars, no nearby buildings, just a single flickering light above the entrance, and that constant low electrical hum you only notice when everything else is quiet. I remember sitting in my car for a second before going in, just looking at the building and feeling like something about it wasn't right. Not dangerous exactly, just off. Inside, it smelled like dust and old cardboard. The place was split into two sections. One half was still being used for storage, rows of stacked boxes and narrow aisles, and the other half had been shut down completely. Lights off, access restricted, nothing but empty space behind locked doors. The manager barely looked at me when he handed me the key card. He just pointed me toward the security office and said the cameras were already running. Then, right before I walked away, he added something that stuck with me more than anything else. He said, "If something feels off, don't go looking for it." At the time, I thought it was just a strange thing to say. Now I know it wasn't. My shift started at 10 p.m., and for the first couple of hours, everything was exactly what I expected. I sat in the office, scrolling on my phone, occasionally glancing up at the monitors. There were 12 camera feeds in total, all in black and white, slightly grainy but clear enough to see the main areas of the building. By midnight, nothing had happened. No movement, no alarms, nothing unusual at all. And that's what made it so easy to notice when something finally did. At 12:43 a.m., one of the cameras flickered. It was camera 6, covering a storage corridor in the active section of the building. At first, it looked like a normal glitch, just a quick distortion across the screen, like the signal had cut for a split second. Then, it happened again. I leaned forward a little, paying closer attention, and that's when I saw something move across the floor. Wasn't fast or random like a bug or debris. It was slow and steady, like a shadow being dragged from one side of the frame to the other. That was the moment I stopped treating it like a glitch. I sat up, focused on the screen, and a few seconds later, a figure appeared at the far end of the corridor. I know for a fact it wasn't there before. The figure was just standing there, completely still, facing toward the camera. There was something unnatural about the way it held itself. Too straight, too rigid, like it wasn't even breathing. I felt that immediate tension in my chest, the kind that hits before you can even explain why something feels wrong. I picked up the radio and asked control if there was anyone else scheduled to be in the building that night. There was a short pause. Then they told me no, I was the only one there. I remember asking again just to be sure, and they repeated the same thing. Just me. But I was still looking right at someone on that camera feed. A few seconds later, the figure moved, but it didn't walk. Didn't take a step or shift its weight. It just changed position. One moment it was at the end of the hallway, and the next it was closer, like the footage had skipped forward. That's when I pushed back from the desk, because at that point, I knew I wasn't looking at a normal person. I looked away for maybe 2 seconds, and when I looked back, the corridor was empty again. Completely empty. I tried to convince myself it was just a camera issue, something wrong with the system, but that feeling didn't go away. It only got worse. At 1:07 a.m., another camera went out. Camera 3, which covered the loading dock, just cut to black without any warning. I called it in, but this time there was no response at all. The radio was completely silent. That's when I started to notice the pattern. The only cameras that were malfunctioning were the ones closest to that corridor, closest to whatever I had just seen. I didn't want to look back at camera 6, but I did anyway. And when the image flickered back on, the figure was there again. Only now, it was much closer. Close enough to see that something about its proportions wasn't right. It was too tall for the space, its limbs too long, bent at angles that didn't look physically possible. And its face. I couldn't make out clear features, not because of the camera quality, but because it almost looked like it couldn't hold a single shape, like it was shifting, trying to settle on something. Then it slowly tilted its head, and I got the distinct feeling that it was looking directly at me, not just the camera, but me in that room. That was the moment I realized something I couldn't explain. It knew where I was. One by one, the camera feed started cutting out. First camera 6, then another, until almost every screen was black, except one. The camera showing the hallway right outside the security office. I stared at it, completely still, hoping nothing would appear. Then the lights in that hallway flickered, and I saw a shadow stretch across the floor, long and distorted, right up to the door. A second later, I heard it. Not through the speakers, from outside the room. A slow dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. It stopped right outside the door. Then there was a knock. Soft, controlled, almost polite. I didn't move. A few seconds passed, and then it knocked again, slightly louder this time, like it was waiting for a response. The door handle turned slowly, just enough to test the lock. Then everything went quiet, and that's when I heard the voice. Right on the other side of the door. It said, "Hey, it's me. Open up." It was my voice, exactly my voice. Same tone, same pacing, everything. I felt my stomach drop instantly because there was no way that was possible. I was still standing there, staring at the door, and whatever was outside sounded exactly like me. Then the monitors all came back on at once. Every single one of them was showing the hallway outside the office, but from angles that didn't make sense, angles that shouldn't even exist based on where the cameras were placed. And in every single feed, that thing was standing right behind the door, completely still, smiling. At that point, I didn't think about what to do next. I just ran. There was a back exit in the office that led into a narrow service hallway, and I went straight through it without even looking back. My footsteps were echoing so loudly, it felt like something was right behind me, matching every step. I pushed through the emergency exit and ran out into the parking lot. The outside air hit me all at once, cold and quiet, like nothing had happened at all. I made it to my car, locked the doors, and finally looked back at the building. On the second floor, through one of the dark windows, I saw it again, standing there, watching me. It didn't move at first, and then slowly, it raised its hand and waved. Not fast, not aggressive, just slow and deliberate, like it knew I wasn't coming back. I quit the next morning without going back inside. I left the keycard and drove off, and no one ever contacted me about it. No questions, no follow-up, nothing. almost like they already knew what happened during those shifts. If you made it this far, subscribe. I've got more stories like this, and some of them are even harder to explain. Because looking back on it now, I don't think that thing was trying to get into that room. I think it was trying to learn how to replace me.